In the heart of our great nation, where the strength of our communities is built upon the foundation of strong and loving families, an urgent crisis is unfolding. Child Protective Services, CPS, an institution designed to safeguard our most vulnerable, has in many cases betrayed its noble mission. Too often, families are torn apart not by neglect or abuse, but by systemic failures and corruption. We can no longer stand idly by as these injustices continue. We are here to give a voice to those who have been isolated, to shine a light on the corruption, and to rally our fellow citizens in this critical fight for justice. Every day, countless families are caught in a web of bureaucracy and abuse of power, their lives disrupted and their bonds shattered. Children, who should be nurtured and protected, are instead placed in situations that can be just as, if not more, harmful than the circumstances from which they were taken. Parents, often bewildered and powerless, face insurmountable odds as they fight to reunite with their children. This is not the America we believe in. We cannot allow these injustices to persist. Our mission is to educate, to inform, and to inspire action. We promise to bring you daily updates on CPS, exposing the truth and fighting for reform. We must remember that the future of our nation depends on the strength and unity of our families. By standing together, we can hold CPS accountable and ensure that it fulfills its true purpose, protecting children and preserving families. This is a fight we must not and will not lose. We are committed to saving our families and securing a brighter future for all. The road ahead is challenging, but with your support, we can make a difference. Together, we will bring hope to those who have lost it and ensure that justice prevails. Let us unite with unwavering resolve and a sense of patriotic duty to safeguard the integrity of our families and the future of our nation.
Good evening. You are watching Turn the Page with Kim Page. I'm your host, Kim Page. Last night we discussed some of the procedures that CPS is required to do, the court is required to take when removing your children. We're going to go ahead and continue on with that discussion tonight. Now, please remember that everything that I'm telling you is what they are supposed to do. It is not what they actually do in majority of cases. This is what they are supposed to do in a perfect world. If they did exactly as they're supposed to do, this is what they would do. Before I get started on this, though, I've had a few parents that have asked me about this rumor going around about Trump making it to where the parent who is not paying child support cannot claim their children on their taxes. That is untrue. Number one, Trump does not have the authority to change a law 100% by himself. If he does attempt to change the law, we have legislators that actually can and will step in to stop that. As a matter of fact, I'm watching Fox News right now. Many of you may have heard that Trump actually signed a bill saying that if you were born in the United States, you are not a citizen, basically to discourage anchor babies, where people from Mexico and other countries would come in. They would get pregnant, they would have a baby so that they could have a reason to stay in the United States. Because this is actually a constitutional protection, that order was actually illegal. And we had, I believe it was 11, it may have been 17 states that actually sued to have that stop. And today a federal judge temporarily blocked his order. So when a president decides to put something like that in place, If it is not constitutional, governors and state attorneys from all over the country are going to start filing lawsuits to stop it. The second thing is the legislator can say, nope, we're not going to do this. That's not the way this is going to work. And they can overturn the president's signature. In our country, again, this is if it's perfect, this is if it runs the way that it's supposed to on paper. The president basically can say, this is my suggestion. There's certain things he does have a right to do without anybody else upholding his decision. But I would say about 75% of what the president's powers are, they have to be approved by the legislator. So the whole thing with the child tax credit, you can't claim your children on your taxes if you're not the one paying child support. That's not true. That's just something that people started saying because people want you to hate the president. So, okay. So last night we ended with talking about 72-hour hearing. We talked about the 72-hour or spoke about the 72-hour hearing is what happens when your children are taken. Now, a 72-hour hearing is literally what it says in its name. It is a hearing that happens within 72 hours of the removal of your children. Now, this hearing is the single most important hearing of your case. This hearing sets the tone for how everything else is going to go. So what this hearing does, and this is the only hearing that it is acceptable legal practice for an attorney to respond in court as opposed to responding in writing. One of the things that attorneys are taught the moment they start law school is, if it's not in writing, it did not happen. With a 72-hour hearing, attorneys do not have enough time to be able to prepare a written motion. So this is one of the few hearings. There's some in criminal court as well, but as far as civil court, which is where CPS is at, a 72-hour hearing is one of the only hearings that it's acceptable to not do anything in writing. Now, what a 72-hour hearing is, it's literally you answering to accusations against you. The rest of your case is not really about the accusations. It is, but it's not. The rest of the case is not about defending yourself against the accusations. The 72-hour hearing is. It is the single most important hearing because if you are accused, we were talking about Beyonce and Blue Ivy last night. If Beyonce was accused of putting cigarettes out, or excuse me, I believe the caseworker decided that Blue Ivy had guns, knives, and drugs at access of the child. So Blue Ivy is playing in cocaine, and CPS takes Blue Ivy and goes to court and tells the judge that Blue Ivy is playing in cocaine and there's guns and knives all over the place that she can reach. So at the 72-hour hearing, that is where Beyonce is going to respond to and defend herself against the accusations against her. If the judge determines that there is enough evidence that Beyonce likely did have guns and knives and drugs at the reach of the child, then the judge is going to grant CPS's motion to let CPS have the children. The rest of the case is going to be more about the parent doing what the parent needs to get the child back. You're going to have hearings to determine what stuff you should be doing, whether you should be doing drug testing, whether you should be doing anger management, parenting classes, things such as that. But the 72-hour hearing is where you basically get to defend yourself against the accusations themselves. So we're going to back up just a little bit. We're going to pause on the 72-hour hearing. So if the caseworker who was called out to Beyonce's home, remember the initial accusation was that Beyonce was putting out cigarettes on Blue Ivy's arms and that she was not feeding Blue Ivy, that there was no food in the house. So the caseworker comes out to Beyonce's home and she sees everything and she says, well, there's no cigarette burns on Blue Ivy's arms, and there's plenty of food in the kitchen. I don't see anything wrong with the house. Everything seems great. I think that this accusation is unfounded. It's also in some states, they call it not indicated. In that case, the caseworker will go back to CPS and they will speak with their supervisor and say, hey, there's nothing here. This is just a BS call. And they will write up a letter letting you know that they determined that your case was either unfounded or not indicated. And when that happens, you're good unless you get another person calling on you. They will keep these records in their system until your child's grandchildren have kids. I had a situation, just so you'll know how this works, how long they keep this. My my oldest child was 8 years old. This is before I knew anything about CPS. And our next door neighbor had left her 5-year-old son home with his dad. Well, dad had a huge drug problem. And I came home from work. I had my 8-year-old and my 5-year-old with me, or excuse me, 3-year-old at the time with me. And I pull up, and it's getting close to dark, and I see this little boy in the driveway, and he's by himself. It's not normal. His mom's normally got him inside about this time of day. So I have my kids go inside, and I asked him what was going on. Where's your mom? And he tells me that mommy's not home and that daddy's inside, but he can't wake daddy up. So I take him inside my house. He's filthy. He looks like he's been playing in mud puddles all day. So I take him inside my house and I ask my 8-year-old to get him something to drink, and I tell them I'm going to be right back. I walk next door and go inside, and dad is on the couch. He is passed out. And I go and try to wake him up. He is passed out so bad that I have slapped him a couple of times trying to rouse him. He's not moving at all. He's breathing, he's alive, but he is not responding at all. So I take the little boy inside, and I ended up trying to get a hold of his mother. Um, I had no luck in getting a hold of his mother. I tried to get a hold of his grandparents, and I wasn't able to get a hold of them either. So while I was at his house trying to wake dad, I ended up going in his bedroom and getting him a change of clothes and everything just in case I had to let him stay at my house. But also because he was filthy, I wanted to get him a bath and get him cleaned up. So I fixed dinner for him and for my kids, and he got a bath, and my kids did their homework and they played. And about 9 o'clock, I still haven't heard from mom. And dad apparently is still passed out because I haven't heard anything from him. So I decided that it was time that I need to call and let the police know what was going on. So I called the police. We lived in a really, really small town back then, so everybody knew everybody. And one of the police officers came out, and they knew me. Um, they knew that me having him was absolutely fine, that they actually would rather me keep him than them try to take the child and figure out some placement, what have you. Um, and the next morning, the police were able to find his grandparents. Still never found his mom, but They found his grandparents, and they came over and told me that the grandparents were going to come pick him up, and told me, we know you got to go to work. We can take him to the police station and let them pick him up from the police station. So they took the little boy to the police department. That day, I got a call from Child Protective Services to ask me about what happened. I had to give them my information statement, what have you. This is when my kids were 8 and 3, my older 2 children. My CPS case is in regards to my younger 2 children. When they were taken in 2019, they were 4 and 5 years old. My middle child, the 3-year-old with the other story, was 17. So when we went to court on my case, they brought up the stuff about this case prior. And they brought it up. It wasn't about me at all. It was just about what I had witnessed, and my having spoke to CPS and had to give statements. They brought this up. This was, 15 years prior. They still brought this up in my case. So when they close your case, even if they close it as not indicated, they still will keep that information about you. And they're going to keep that information about you for as long as CPS shows up or is in existence. So let's say that the caseworker actually comes in, and there's no burn marks all over Blue Ivy, but there isn't any food in the refrigerator and the cabinets. They're bare. So the caseworker says, okay, Beyonce, why is there no food in the house? Are you having trouble being able to afford food? So Beyonce says, yeah, we had a financial situation and we're really struggling to be able to have food right now. So what the caseworker would do at that time would put Blue Ivy on what's called a safety plan. Now, a safety plan is defined as a structured strategy designed to protect a child from potential harm or risk. Usually what happens is the child is actually, the parent is asked to have a friend or family member come get the child and let the child stay with them temporarily. During this time, CPS is supposed to do an investigation to determine what the parent needs in order to be able to be a good parent, to be a properly functioning parent. And they are supposed to help the parent do whatever it is to get back to that point. If it's get the parent on food stamps, if it's help get the power turned back on, if it's help get the parents a home, if it's to help get them a job, clothing for the children, what have you, anything that is needed to be able to the help the parents to be able to function as best as they can for the child. In almost every state, the legal definition of dependency is the inability or unwillingness to provide for your child. This means the basic things that a person needs to be able to live: food, water, clothing, shelter. So with a safety plan, that is what CPS is supposed to do. They are supposed to help the parents if they've stumbled over something to be able to get back to that position to where their children are no longer dependent on the state to help them be able to survive. So if Beyonce is put on a safety plan, then CPS is going to sit down and talk to Beyonce and say, okay, what are the things that you need us to do to help you be able to be the best parent? We see that you have no food, so let's work on getting you food stamps. Let's talk about the reason that you don't have any food. You said there was a financial situation. Tammy, let's not have these discussions on my show, please. If we're going to do that, then I'm going to ask you to be blocked from my show. If you would like to talk to Herbert, if you would like to call people names, then you can please do that on someone else's show, or you can say that to him. But you're not going to do it here. I appreciate you not doing it. Thank you very much. So, CPS worker is supposed to determine the things that Beyonce needs in order to be able to um, be the best functioning parent. Food stamps, caseworker says, Beyonce, you said that there was financial issues. Why is there a financial issue? Well, it could be because um, we lost our job, or because we had an unexpected medical bill. So the CPS worker is supposed to help them try to find another job, or um, be able to, help them find financial aid to help pay for the medical bill. Whatever it takes to be able to help the parent get back to a place where they can take care of their child without having a bunch of assistance from anybody else to do it. Now, again, all of this is what they're supposed to do. It's not what they actually do. Vinny, can you please remove Tammy from the chat? We're not doing this, Tammy. So a safety plan is a non-enforceable contract. This means that they do not have the elements of a contract in order to be able to go to a judge and say, Judge, they wouldn't do what we told them to do, so we want them, we want to be able to take the kids because they didn't do what we told them to do. It is a voluntary thing. You do not have to let your children go with a family member or a friend. You do not have to tell them why you're struggling. You don't have to tell them why you have no food in your house. You do not have to take their resources to help you find a job or to be able to help you pay that medical bill. It is strictly very voluntary, and it is not binding at all. So let's get back to the 72-hour hearing. You're going to go into the 72-hour hearing, and you are going to be, if you're lucky, this is what it's supposed to be, you're going to be allowed to go into the courtroom. Many cases, parents are not allowed in the courtroom at all at any stage of their case. The law says that that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be allowed in there. So if you have a 72-hour hearing and you are allowed in the courtroom before the judge is going to ask you if you need an attorney, if you do not have one with you. And if you tell the judge that, yes, I do need an attorney, I cannot afford one, the judge is going to appoint you an attorney. The judge is going to allow you to go out in the hallway or go out in a conference room and have a few minutes to talk to your attorney. He's going to hear another case, and then he'll bring you back in a little bit after you've had a chance for you and your attorney to kind of familiarize yourself with the case and each other. Once you go back in, during this time that you're talking to your attorney, you're going to let the attorney know all that's crap. None of this stuff happened. There were no drugs. There were no guns. Or, you know what? Maybe there were drugs and there were guns, or at least it looked like it. But, Beyonce is a big time music star. I can't speak tonight, guys. And, she does a lot of music videos, and so is her husband. Maybe all the guns and knives that the caseworker saw were not real. And maybe the pile of cocaine that the caseworker saw Blue Ivy playing in was actually just flour. And that this was all stuff that they were getting to use and they were using as part of one of their new music videos. So Beyonce can tell the attorney this, and the attorney is to relay this to the judge. If the judge believes the attorney and the attorney is good enough at telling the story that they need to tell, then the judge can say, okay, well, let's test to see if this actually is drugs. Let's look at the guns, let's look at the knives. If they turn out to be fake and it turns out that it is flour, your kids can go home. Let's come back in 2 weeks. That's what the judge can do. The judge can go, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I know you, Beyonce. I know you do crazy stuff like this. I know your husband does crazy stuff like this in all of your videos. So I believe that you're telling the truth. I believe that all this is fake and it's just for your new music video. So I'm going to rule that CPS had no right to take your child, and I'm going to order CPS give your child back. The judge can also say, you know what, that's a likely story. I know that you're a big star and whatever, but you're going to be bringing all this stuff in your house, and it looks bad. And even though it may be a fake gun or a fake knife or whatever, that's still teaching your children the wrong things. Blah blah blah. And we'll come back in 6 weeks for another hearing. So what's going to happen at this point, or what's supposed to happen at this point, is before CPS leaves the courthouse, CPS is supposed to let you know that they want to have a meeting with you. This meeting is sometimes referred to as an ISP, that is individualized service plan. They can refer to it as an ISP meeting, a family team meeting. There's several different terms that they use, but basically what this is this is a meeting between the parents and their attorneys if they have one, and the CPS workers and their attorney. During this meeting, what is supposed to happen is CPS is supposed to say, okay, Beyonce, you would like to have your child back. In order to have your child back, we need to see what we can do to help you be able to get your child back. There's certain things that you need to do to be able to meet the legal requirements to get your child back. This is supposed to be parent-led, meaning that the parent says, I want to get my child back. I don't have food in my house, or I've got these fake guns and fake drugs in my house, and I need to be able to have I need to be able to have some help to either be able to get the food or to be able to get um, the fake weapons out. So the parent sets their goal. Okay. The parent decides what needs to be done to reach that goal. And what CPS is supposed to do is say, okay, Beyonce, you didn't have any food in your house. And the reason you didn't have any food in your house is because of financial issues. This is what we can do to help you with that. And you're supposed to write out a plan together to help you get to the point of being able to have food in your house. That may be involving applying for food stamps, finding lists of food pantries. It may be, helping you get involved with a jobs program, with vocational training, so you can get the education for a job that is going to be able to pay for enough food. They are supposed to help you get back to a legal status of a fit parent. ISP documents are not legally binding because they also are not a contract. So I'm going to go back. Last night we discussed what a contract is. So I'm just going to touch on that one more time. A contract. There are 10 basic components broken down in simplest terms of what a contract is. You have an offer, you have acceptance, you have consideration, you have capacity. A consideration is when something of value is exchanged. If there's not something that is exchanged, some sort of value that is exchanged, then there's no contract. So when there's something of value exchanged with CPS, they have your child and they are saying you have to do these things to get your child back. That's not a contract because it's not consideration, because they're not saying you give us this and we'll give you that. They're saying we are going to keep what's yours until you give us more. So that's why a safety plan is not a contract. That's why an ISP also is not a contract. However, an ISP can be held more binding by the court than a safety plan can. Capacity. You have to have the mental capacity to be able to enter into a contract. That means that you have to be of legal age. You can't be 12. You have to have the mental capacity. You can't have an IQ of 16 and enter into a contract. If you've got severe Down syndrome, you can't enter into a contract. If you've had a stroke and that's caused severe intellectual deficits, you can't enter into a contract. If you dropped out of school in fifth grade, then you can enter into a contract because you had the capacity to learn, you just didn't. The contract must be legal and not against public policy. So, if you give me these things, we will give you your child back, means that it's not legal. It must be a mutual agreement. You must be in agreement that they keep your child while you do these things for them. Everybody has to sign these documents. If it's not signed, then it's not as good as the paper it's written on. It means nothing. It also has to have specific terms and conditions. This means the fine print where it says that if you, Bob and I are buying a car, I tell Bob it's $1,000 for the car. He gives me $1,000. In our contract, it says that if Bob figures out that the motor is bad, then he has 24 hours to let me know, and I will refund him the money. Those are terms and conditions. That's all the stuff that you everybody tells you always read the fine print. You didn't read the contract, so that's why you didn't realize that we can come in and steal your kid. That's what that is. You're also going to have remedies on there. Remedies are if Bob tells me 6 hours after he gets the car that the motor has blown up, but the motor is bad. He's within that 24-hour window. I have to give him that $1,000 back. If I do not give him that $1,000 back, our contract should say something about what option he has in order to get that contract back. It can be mediation, arbitration, which is where instead of going to a judge, you go to a third party that's not a judge, has no legal capacity, and you basically argue your point without all the legal crap involved in it, and you let them decide whether or not or how the case ends up. Or it can say that, you would have to go to court. You would have to sue me to be able to get that money. And then the other thing that it must contain is a termination clause. A termination clause is something that gives you the ability to end the contract. That can be if Bob is buying the car from me and he's buying it for $1,000, but he's going to make payments on it. He's going to make payments of $100 a week. The termination clause in this contract is when he makes the 10th payment, that's $1,000, the contract is terminated. It's done. There's no more contract to worry about. So he can't come back 2 days after he made the last payment and say, oh, the engine's not good. Or come back and say, I don't like the color of it, so I want my money back. He did not, even if those things were in the contract, because the contract is done and over with, it's done and over with. He can't do anything else. So because a safety plan does not have the key components of those things, and because a ISP or a family team meeting does not have those components, it's not legally binding. CPS will make you believe it is, but it's not. And in certain cases, certain ways, you could argue in court that you did not agree to do the things that they demanded you do. So, you've had your 72-hour hearing, and the judge decided that CPS is going to keep your kid while they are. Beyonce said the 72-hour, he wants CPS to keep the child until he finds out if the alleged drugs are actually drugs. Technically, yes, Amy, you can mediate a CPS custody case, but in order to do mediation, both sides have to agree to it. CPS will never agree to mediation unless they're ordered to. But technically, yes, you can mediate a settlement on CPS. So your child is going to be in CPS custody with a foster home for the 2 weeks at least that the judge is waiting for you to give for the results to come in as to whether or not it was drugs or if it was actually flour. During this time, you are going to want to still be able to see your child. So you are going to want visitation. Now, CPS, during the ISP meeting, they will discuss visitation. Now, what is supposed to happen is the judge is supposed to say, this is what your visitation is. You get 3 days a week visitation for 8 hours a day. CPS figure out the details. What judges do, however, is they will tell CPS to figure it all out. How many hours of visitations you get, how many days you get, where you're allowed to visit your child. They will have CPS do all of that. That is called improper delegation of authority. That means that the judge is giving CPS the authority to make decisions that they don't have the authority to do. That goes back to the same thing that I just said about the president, saying that you don't have birthright citizenship. The president does not have that authority to make those decisions. So, because the president doesn't have the authority to make that decision, all these governors and all these state attorneys that sued, they were saying, whoa. He doesn't have the right to do that. He doesn't have the right to do that. Well, neither does the judge to tell CPS to do his job. It is the judge's job to determine visitation. So, as I said, CPS generally does the determination of it. You will speak with CPS during this ISP meeting, and they will say, okay, we're going to give you visitation on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 2 p.m. until 4 p.m. You are going to have visits at XYZ Visitation Center. So during this time, you're going to go visit your child. The Visitation Center, it is it is a business that CPS hires to supervise your visits with your children. At these visits, the center gets to make its own rules as far as what kind of things you're allowed to bring, what kind of activities you're allowed to do while on their premises. Unless a judge says that it has to be different, you have to follow the rules of the center, the visitation center. They can say that, no outside meals are allowed, or you can bring food, but it has to be It has to be packaged. They have to be able to watch you break the seal. You can't bring your own your own cooking, or some will let you bring your pets. Some say no. Some say that, you're not allowed to take pictures in the center because there's other children visiting their parents, and that's a violation of their privacy. So they'll set out their own rules as to how the visitation will go. These rules are not something that CPS has any control over. Um, and the only way that these rules can change is if a judge says that the visitation center cannot impose these rules. So you're going to have your visits, and then CPS is going to have had either a police officer that was on scene when they saw all the weapons and the drugs, because likely what's going to have happened is CPS is going to go, wait a minute, there's a bunch of criminal activity going on here with drugs and weapons. So we need to call the cops. The cops are likely going to have tested the drugs, or the alleged drugs, to see if it actually is drugs or if it's flour. And when those tests come back, you're going to go to court and you're going to present to the judge that, yep, they were fake guns, they were fake knives, they were fake, it was flour, none of it was true. And the judge then can decide, okay, this parent doesn't need y'all. Y'all just didn't do a very good investigation to determine what exactly was going on. Give the parent their children back. That is very, very, very rare that it happens like that. What would normally happen is the judge would say, okay, so we determined that the drugs were fake, the guns were fake, the knives were fake. Your story that it was all for a movie, or excuse me, a video is likely true. But somebody still called us, or still called CPS because there was an issue. I think that we need to keep your children in foster care and work a reunification plan. A reunification plan is a court order that CPS has to do certain things or provide you with certain services for you to be able to get your children back. So it could be that, you didn't have food in your house. Beyonce didn't have food in her house. So the judge is gonna say, okay, CPS, you're gonna get Beyonce set up to where she has food in her house and that she has a way to get food. If it was a matter of she didn't have transportation, you're going to help her with bus passes so that she can get to the local grocery store, get to the local food pantry to be able to get groceries. But before then, y'all are going to make sure her house has got groceries in it. So y'all are going to help her stock up with groceries. The other thing is you're going to work on some parenting classes with her. And these parenting classes are going to focus on her being able to understand the importance of nutrition for her child and not having guns and drugs in the home, even though they were fake. What we're going to do is we're going to come back in 3 months and see how Beyonce is doing. During this time, foster parents are likely going to have the children. Now, the children could actually go with a family member. According to law, I believe in every single state, the law actually says that CPS is supposed to place the children with a family member before they go into foster care. That foster care is only to be used if a family member is unavailable to care for the child, a family member does not have the ability to care for the child, or if there is a proven reason that this family member is unsafe to be with the child. That does not mean that the family member had 7 speeding tickets in 25 years of driving. That does not mean that the family member is unsafe because they smoke. It has to be they are unsafe because they were found guilty of raping a 12-year-old child, or they've got a lengthy prison history for violence, domestic violence. Um, so what CPS is supposed to do is they're supposed to do an investigation on the family members to determine if they're okay and safe for the child to go. Now, with the safety plan, they don't do any of this. They tell you to figure out where your child goes. When they take your child from you, they are the ones that have to determine if those family members are somewhere safe that your child can go. CPS is supposed to do a background check, and they're also supposed to do what's called a home study. A home study is where they go into this family member's home, and they check to see if the family member has adequate space for the child to stay, if they have enough food, if they have running water, they have power. They want to make sure that they don't have, meat hooks hanging from the ceiling, or rats running around the house. They don't want the bubonic plague to be started with your child being placed in their house, or it's not a situation where they're hoarders or anything like that, which would be a danger to the child. Um, they will they're supposed to do this, and it's not supposed to take 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. It's supposed to be about a week process, if that. Now sometimes it can be a little bit lengthier if your Uncle Bob is who you want to have the child, and Uncle Bob just got back um you know from Japan. Well, Uncle Bob probably doesn't have a whole lot of history here in the United States, so they may have to contact the Japanese embassy and say, "Hey, we just need to make sure that Uncle Bob didn't get any trouble over there." It may take a little bit longer to get that information from him about him. But as a general rule of thumb, they're not supposed to have the children with strangers more than about a week. What actually happens, however, is CPS will say, "Oh, we tried to contact grandma, but grandma never answered." Or we went to the house and there was nobody there. We did a background check, but she's got all of these different things on her. They do not check and make sure if this information was accurate. Um, your name can be Sam Smith, and you're a woman. They look up Sam Smith and they see the singer. They do not verify anything. And they will tell the judge, "Oh, we checked them out, but they didn't respond, or we didn't see anything about them that was um, valid to be able to take the child. So we just decided that they were better off in foster care." They can't actually make that determination themselves. They actually have to tell the judge this, and they have to ask permission from the judge to keep the child in foster care instead of keeping the child with family placement. So when you um, when you have that 72-hour hearing, if your judge decides that it's necessary to keep your children in foster care, whether it's just long enough for the drug test to come back or for a lengthier period, the very first thing that you need to do is, if you have any family or friends that you trust, you need to, the moment you walk out of that courtroom, you need to call every one of them and say, "I need you to file a motion in the court asking to be placement." Because CPS will not tell the judge that you have family members asking to take care of the child. Those family members are going to have to tell the judge. There are documents that the court clerk can print off for them that they can fill out asking to be placement. There is also, it would be a little bit later, they can actually file what's called a motion to intervene. This is something that that is filed in court, asking the judge to let that family member become part of the case, so that the judge can consider them to get custody of the child, not just placement. So the moment that you walk out of the courtroom, get a hold of every family member you can find. The other thing that you want to do is immediately upon getting home, sit down at your computer or at a notebook, whatever, write down every single thing that happened at court. Write down every single thing that's happened from the moment CPS knocked on your door. Okay. You do not want to have any emotion in this, only facts. At 8:53, CPS worker knocked on my door. At 10:04, cops showed up. You want the facts. That's all you want. You don't want to go in with it destroyed me, my child was hysterical. You don't want to do any of that. You want to write all this stuff down. You want to do this with every single time that you have an interaction with CPS. This is going to go into, and we'll address this next time, what's called a parental court report. Now, the other thing that you want to do when your attorney meets with you for the first time, many attorneys will ask you to sign some documentation. The only documentation that you want to sign is the attorney-client privilege documentation. This is a document that says that you agree to have this attorney represent you, and this attorney cannot say anything to anybody without your permission when it's about your case. Okay? That is the only document you want to sign. Many attorneys will actually say, tell their clients to sign a dependency declaration. Dependency is the legal term that the courts use that says whether or not the child is in need of something, whether it is care from, whether it is needed to be cared for because of medical treatment. They're dependent for medical treatment. They're dependent on the state for food and shelter and clothing, or they're dependent on their parents for that. It is the legal term that it's the legal term actually is, it's a legal status indicating that a child can or cannot safely live with their parent. Okay. It's, if you sign this dependency declaration, then what that means is you are saying that your child is dependent on the state. That this means that you are admitting you are not fit to care for your child, that you are not fit to provide your child with the things that they need in order to be healthy and live. Many attorneys will tell parents, if you do not sign this document, you will never see your children again. This is bullshit. This actually, what they're doing is, if you don't sign this document, I have to do my job. And I'm too lazy to do my job, or I don't have time because I'm not getting paid for your case. So I really don't want to do what's needed to be done to help you. So sign this so I can make my job easier. That's what that document is. Never sign it. Never sign anything else other than the attorney-client privilege document. And you make the attorney walk you through every single word of it if you need to. You spend 6 hours with that attorney understanding this document before you sign it. Do not let the attorney pressure you into signing anything until you have a 1,000,000% understanding of what's in that document. So, guys, we have about 5 more minutes before we are at the end of the show. So, we're going to put a pin where we're at, and we can pick up again on another show with a parental court report. What I want to talk about for the last couple of minutes is what I do every show. CPS involvement, whether it is them coming out one time and determining there's no reason for them to continue to be involved with your family, or them coming out and you going through the entire process and having your rights terminated. It's traumatizing. It's terrifying. It is PTSD inducing. It can cause serious anxiety, depression. Many parents have taken their own lives because of the hell that CPS has put them through. If you feel like you can't go on, if you feel like suicide is your only option, if you just feel like you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel and you just don't know what to do and you're just surrounded by a cloud of darkness, message me. Kim Page on Facebook. Amy Walmsley is an admin on my Facebook page. Message her. Message Vinny. Message Darren. Message Brenda. Message any of us. We will be more than happy to talk to you. We would much rather be woke up at 2 a.m. with you being upset, you crying, you not knowing what to do, than for you to take a bunch of pills or to put a gun to your head. I personally don't want to have to clean up more blood. I got my fill of that. So if you feel like, guys, hold on just a minute. I've got somebody knocking at the door. Oh my gosh. Scared the mess out of me.
Sorry. I tried not to like 200 times.
I heard it. I'm doing my podcast and I heard it and I was like, oh.
I have a podcast. That's cool.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. You're saying for like 15 seconds.
So anyway, if you feel like that you just can't go on, give us a call, message us, something, but don't do anything stupid. There's so much more. There's so much more to live for. Your kids need you to be there to explain to them what's going on. So just figure out something that you can do to continue to have a reason to go on. One of the things that I recommend is herbal supplements, not marijuana. It's not legal in every state. In some states it is. If it is, have at it. But one of the things I recommend for anxiety and depression is something called GABA, GABA. You can get it at Walmart, Walgreens, anywhere that there's herbal supplements, GNC. After my best friend killed himself, it was majorly helpful for me. And honestly, it kept me from just absolutely losing it. So check into that if you're having some issues with anxiety. But we're going to go ahead and call it a night, guys. We will be back tomorrow night. I think I may have a guest that'll be with us tomorrow night. We will have to see what happens when we sign on tomorrow. But for now, y'all have a great evening. And thank you for watching Turn the Page with Kim Page.
Imagine being a child who has been torn away from their security blanket, their parents, the ones who stop the boogeyman from terrorizing the nights and curing their boo-boos when they scrape their knees. Now just imagine how they mightest feel when the CPS meant to protect them tears them away from their supposed abusers and places them with strangers who have zero comforting skills. They need to be calm. They are confused, lost, panicked, and needing their parents, but CPS took them away for the purpose of saving them. The kids don't even know why, and they are told that the parents they attach to no longer want them. What do you think that does? Do you think that this is how protecting children is supposed to look? Abolish CPS.